This is Jason Anderson, Chairman of the Killenly Town Council. I am calling this regular Town Council meeting to order. It is currently 7:01 p.m. on Tuesday, February 11th. Mr. Jarvis, if you could, please.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here before you. Thank you for your service and having the courage to invite ministers to come and pray. I think that's an important part of everything that we do. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
Jesus, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all that you've done. We thank you for this community that we call home. I pray, Lord, you continue to bless those that serve you, God, that you would continue to help this town to thrive, that you'd bless the leaders, that you bless this town, God, that you continue to heal the land, you continue to heal the divide, and help us, Lord, to get back to our roots, Lord, allowing you to be center and allowing us to love our neighbor as ourselves, that we might move forward united together for a purpose, God, of uniting this community together, that it might be pleasing to you, that you might bless the fruits of our labor and allow us to grow stronger together. We thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For roll call purposes, all council members are in attendance. Ms. George is joining us remotely. We'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is item 5, adoption of minutes of previous meetings. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes from special town council meeting January 7th, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Ms. Wakefield, seconded by Ms. Barclay. Discussion or corrections on these?
Looking quick, there might be a correction here on interviews with boards and commissions. It's reappointment to planning and zoning for Verge, and I think that was, obviously wasn't, was it item 3E?
Kevin, I just
So
want to
just
verify,
the-
are you talking about the very front page?
Yes, that was during the interview process.
Yeah, that was just the listing of what was on the agenda, so it was an agenda item.
It was an item.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other corrections, comments? Ms. George, did you have any?
I do not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is item 6A, proclamation recognizing February 15th to February 22nd, 2025 as National FFA Week. Ms. Wakefield, if you could.
Proclamation recognizing February 15th to 22nd, 2025 as National FFA Week. Whereas FFA and agricultural education provides a strong foundation for the youth of America and the future of food, fiber, and natural resources systems, and whereas FFA promotes premier leadership, personal growth, and career success among its members, and whereas agricultural education and FFA ensure a steady supply of young professionals to meet the growing needs in the science, business, and technology of agriculture, and whereas the FFA motto, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve, gives direction and purpose to these students who take an active role in succeeding in agricultural education, and whereas FFA promotes citizenship, volunteerism, patriotism, and cooperation. And now therefore be it proclaimed by the Town Council of the Town of Killenly that the week of February 15th to the 22nd, 2025 is hereby recognized as National FFA Week. Killenly Town Council, Jason Anderson, Chairman, dated Killenly, Connecticut, this 11th day of February, 2025.
Thank you.
Yep.
We can both go.
FFA organization is our student leadership organization, which is committed to providing all students with a path to achievement in premier leadership, personal growth, and career success through agricultural education.
Within the Killingly FFA program, students have many opportunities to develop skills and explore their interests. In a broad range of agricultural pathways, whether it's being a farmer, a veterinarian, a horticulturalist, a mechanic, a scientist, an entrepreneur, and more. Thank you for recognizing the importance of agriculture in our daily lives and the value of leadership skills our students develop through the National FFA organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'll let you. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, we can do that. Oh, yes.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great rest of your day.
Next item up on the agenda is item 6B, which is a proclamation recognizing February 2025 as Black History Month. Ms. Murphy, if you could, please.
Whereas Black History Month is observed annually across the United States in February, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development. And whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson, a noted historian and author, second African American to earn a PhD from Harvard University, founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, which was later renamed the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, ASALH. And whereas Dr. Woodson initiated Black History Week on February 12, 1926, and for many years the second week of February, chosen to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, has been declared by African Americans in the United States. And whereas in 1976, President Gerald Ford officially declared Black History Month as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month and is now celebrated all across North America. And now, therefore, the Killingly Town Council does hereby proclaim the month of February 2025 as Black History Month, which is a time for honoring the significant achievements, inspirations, and contributions African Americans have made to our town, state, and nation. Killingly Town Council, Jason Anderson, Chairman, dated at Killingly, Connecticut, this 11th day of February 2025.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Next item on the agenda is item 6C, proclamation recognizing February 2025 as Teen Dating Violence Prevention and Awareness Month. Whereas Teen Dating Violence Prevention and Awareness Month is a national effort to raise awareness about abuse in teen and young adult relationships and promotes programs that prevent this abuse during the month of February. And whereas teen dating violence is a widespread problem affecting youth in every community across the nation. And whereas 1 in 3 young people are affected by physical, sexual, or verbal dating violence, 1 in 10 in a serious relationship have reported being slapped, pushed, hit, threatened, or coerced by their partner, and recognizing breakups are a time of greater risk, even when a relationship was never physically abusive. And whereas young people can choose better relationships when they understand that healthy relationships are based on respect and learn to identify early warning signs of an abusive relationship. And whereas elimination of dating violence must be achieved through cooperation of individuals, organizations, communities, and young people across the nation have organized to put a stop to dating abuse and work alongside their adult allies to educate young people about this violence. And whereas Teen Dating Violence Prevention Awareness Month provides an excellent opportunity for citizens to learn more about preventing teen dating violence and to show support for the numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy, services, and assistance to victims. Now, therefore, The Killenly Town Council does hereby proclaim the month of February 2025 as Teen Dating Violence Prevention and Awareness Month in the town of Killenly. Killenly Town Council, Jason Anderson, Chairman, dated at Killenly, Connecticut, this 11th day of February 2025. Next up on the agenda is item 6D, which is a proclamation recognizing February 2025 as National Library Lovers Month. Whereas libraries provide much more than a place for us to enjoy great novels or discover amazing adventures of untold story. Whereas in a world undergoing constant change, libraries provide enduring connections to the past and future of our communities, nations, and civilizations. And whereas the expansion of electronic networks linking libraries and their resources makes possible easily accessible information for library users around the world. And whereas libraries provide entry to important research about health, economics, housing, the environment, and countless other areas to support better living conditions and to help people lead longer, more productive, and fulfilling lives. Whereas libraries support a competitive workforce with basic literacy programs, computers, and other resources to help children and adults learn to find, evaluate, and use information they need for their jobs, health, education, and other needs. And whereas libraries offer preschool story hour and summer reading programs to encourage children to begin a habit of reading that will serve to benefit their personal and professional lives. Now therefore, the Killenly Town Council does hereby proclaim February 2025 as National Library Lovers Month and urges everyone to visit the library to explore the adventures and possibilities. Killenly Town Council, Jason Anderson, Chairman, dated at Killenly, Connecticut, this 11th day of 2025. Next item is item 6E. We would like to honor Verg Lorentz for her dedication to the community, for her service on being a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission. She served on the Planning and Zoning Commission from April 1979 through December of 2024. And we have a plaque for Verga that we are going to present this 11th day of February 2025.
I think so. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Virga, I want to thank you so much for over 40 years of service to our town. And I know that even when you took that break, because you were taking care of your son until he said he was old enough to take care of himself. I know you. I know you were involved in so many things, and you were a real role model to me of what a woman can accomplish in a small town. And so thank you so much for your dedication to our town and everything that you've given to it.
Virga, I just want to follow up with what Tammy said. It's so true. And I hope in the future you consider coming back. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
That plaque is the least we can do.
Can she hear me?
Yes, oh yeah.
Now, if you step up to the microphone, yes.
This one?
Yep.
No.
Green light.
Green light, okay.
I get it. Okay, thanks back to you. Okay.
Moving on the agenda, next item up is item 7. We have nothing for unfinished business for town meeting action. So we move on to item 8, citizen statements and petitions. We just ask that you don't exceed 5 minutes with any comments you have, and it will be for an aggregate of 45 minutes. Just ask you to step up to the podium, state your name and address.
Ed Grandelski, Upper Maple Street. Last month, I was here talking about the Hartford Pike project.
Ed, hang on one second. Jen, is the podium microphone on? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, last month I was here talking about the Hartford Pike project and how disappointed I was that the town staff did not follow the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The DOT specifically, a DOT permit was supposed to be on file before any construction began on the project. Well, I see a timeline here, a bunch of other stuff, but what I saw was, to get things going, footings were inspected in August, foundations were inspected in September, and the DOT permit was only filed October 1st. I have a big problem where we're not following specifics of a regulatory body. When I go to certain events, I get thrown down my throat that, oh, we are following all the regulations, we are following this, and we are following that. Obviously, this did not happen. And again, we're catering to the developers so that they do sort of whatever they want to do. I don't know, maybe if there was something in writing that they were going to take a risk, that if the DOT decision was going to be contrary to some work or whatever. Well, I saw nothing of the fact. What else is going on in town where even we as a council put something forward and the decision is not followed? I sit here as a volunteer. Yeah, I get a little stipend, so yeah, I am a town employee to some degree, but I'll have to admit that. But basically, I'm a volunteer. People on the Planning and Zoning Commission are volunteers. But people who let stuff slide through the cracks in this particular project are paid people. And they get a handsome salary. I'm getting to the point where I'm getting zero, not respect, but I just can't trust anybody anymore. We're supposed to do a job, and if individuals or whatever decide not to, they should not be employed here anymore. And if we're missing the boat, if we have regulations that we're not following, we're supposed to be working for the best interests of the town of Killingly. And if there's written specifics and there's no gray area, if there was a gray area, maybe I might go with that. But I'm a very unhappy camper with respect to this project. And even with the public outcry that there was on all of this, there was a lot of things going on, there was a lot of activity. This room was filled to capacity with respect to the right-of-way issue, with respect to other things. So there was a lot of things going on, and to not follow the rules is a slap. I'll take it as a slap in my face. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Ms. Gloria, did we have anything submitted?
No public comment was submitted.
Thank you. Last call for public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll move on in the agenda. Next item up is item 9, council and staff comments. I would like to say in regards to Mr. Grandelski's comments, I was very upset to see that when we have a volunteer commission who sets guidelines and regulations, and we expect the town staff to make sure that they're adhered to, because we can't expect our volunteer commissions to, in a sense, babysit every step. That's not their job. That's the job of the town staff. And I was disappointed to hear this. The other thing I was disappointed to hear, I heard recently that when a citizen went onto the property to question why construction was being done when it wasn't permitted yet, why they were given a citation for trespassing. That is rather disturbing to me when In my opinion, the construction should have stopped at that point.
Why would a citizen be allowed on private property? That is not open public
There were-
property.
were
That is
there-
private property, and property right has the ability to trespass somebody. On a construction company, a construction job, you don't just allow people to walk through your construction site. That's inappropriate.
But why wasn't construction stopped at that point?
Why would construction be stopped?
Because we did not have a DOT permit submitted to the town.
And I've relayed previously that the DOT had been consulted numerous times through this project, numerous times through their permitting process. They had given verbal authorization to the developer and verbal authorization to our staff directly that they had no issues and they were not going to require any major road changes or redevelopments. This process occurs with even private citizens as they're doing their own home, so that way they're not having to be held up and potentially dealt with cost factors. Again, there was no deviation from the normal process. There would have been the DOT permit physically getting landing in the Planning and Zoning Department would not have changed anything that has occurred at this point in time. The DOT did not require any additional traffic evaluations, any additional modifications to the site. The only modification that they expressed was a slight movement of the actual sign. The actual sign for the development, period. That was it. That was the only change. And I respectfully take offense that you are alluding to the possibility that I am withholding information or not following through with what the council's requests are, and the staff is not following through. I have staff that sit here and listen through this entire meeting so I can make sure I don't miss something, so we can make sure we provide information to you. And as soon as I have information, I provide it to you. I've done it over the weekends. I've done it over holidays. I take offense at that.
You're fine, I accept you taking offense, but we have a regulatory authority. So where is it? Where is our regulatory authority? DOT is up here, they're God, they can overrule anything they want? No. They took their time in doing what they had to do. There's changes, now, I didn't read all the changes or whatnot, but our P&Z commission members specifically put it that the DOT permit will be on file. Now, if I have to babysit a lot of stuff, maybe I'm gonna go around town and I will have a logbook with me as to what I see going on, certain things going on. This is something that I could follow through. This documentation that things were not followed. So now, if I have to do a log to say this is it and take pictures of what is in violation of protocol, is in violation of planning and zoning regulations, or whatever else, I guess I have to do that. I don't want to. But also, when I'm out in public, and it's, why don't you do something? Okay, I got asked in August, is there a DOT permit? I said, who in their right mind would not start a project like this? So I didn't go anywhere. Then all of a sudden, I am on the site. Or I am in traffic on the site, let's put it that way. I'm backed up in traffic over there. Okay, tractor trailers trying to back into the site, what a nightmare. They all could care less. So I'm at the mobile station fueling up and say, oh, I'm gonna call DOT. Okay, so on my way back home, I was gonna take some pictures because I didn't expect anything to happen. Well, DOT inspector just happened to be there. And he was looking at, we have some issues. So then, but he also happened to say there's no DOT permit for the project. And so I questioned him to say, well, no construction is supposed to happen until the DOT permit is issued. And he says, we don't have anything to do with the private property, all we do is within the right of way. But I'm kind of looking at the wheels are spinning, and he had some issues, but he took care of what he had to do. Probably more specifically, the silt fence was, you know, you might as well forget it. Again, that's a condition of our permit, no one's looking at stuff like that that's going on. So, whatever. So a couple weeks later, I'm in Norwich, stop at DOT office. I can't even get a copy of the DOT. Well, I asked for it. At that point, it was after October. So, yeah, we have a permit. I can't see it.
That's DOT's
Well,
response to you. That's not the town. You asked us for it, we gave it to you.
Well, whatever the case, it took how many months? Let's see, this is just afterwards. But I put a lot of effort in trying to follow this through. We're not doing what, as far, my interpretation is, we're not doing what we're supposed to do. You know, we start, if we're gonna talk to somebody, if we wanna do something like this, get it, if you had an email that DOT would say, yeah, we don't think we have any issues with your site project or whatever, maybe I'll go with that. But when you have a regulatory body and they're told, screw you, we're not following your direction, I can't buy that. I'm sorry. You know.
I understand that respectfully. I understand that that's your position. That is not what staff did. And so we can agree to disagree on that, but that is not what staff did. They had regular, frequent conversations with DOT and had fully reviewed and understood all of DOT's expectations and requirements, and had a number of meetings with DOT regarding that site throughout its entire process. So again, you make it sound as though they had absolutely no communications and just told the Planning and Zoning Commission, to hell with you, we're doing whatever we want, and that is not the case. And I think that's a very poor portrayal of what actually occurred and what staff has relayed to you as to what has occurred. Because I know you've met with the staff for hours on end over this. And they've relayed everything to you, and you've told them to their face that you have no issue. But here we are. So I'm just saying, respectfully, I think that is not fully the information of what has occurred. I've provided all of you the timeline that was prepared by the staff. Feel free to review it. I had wanted to get it to you, but prior to the meeting, I didn't expect that we were going to go into a detailed discussion tonight on an actual timeline for this. I would prefer to actually have additional individuals here for that conversation. But again, the staff followed the process and followed what their steps have been. Again, disagree, it's fine, but I'm just saying that I don't think that you're fully portraying that. And that's the end of my comments.
Then I guess we have to put some mechanisms in place to say that if we have a directive by somebody, that if we intervene, it's okay. I see the nightmare that's going on, the stupidity with the professionals well, I gotta be careful with that because I'm not town professionals, but other professionals on other projects. And you throw that, I see what the developers do, I see statements that are made, totally. You can't be any wronger than what some of them are, but it's okay. We have to accept them. And I will be out there. And I'm not going to be afraid to say anything if I don't feel that the system is not treating us the way it should be.
I have additional comments on that project. Village Commercial states that the building is supposed to be in front and parking in back. For that project, the developer said because of the topography of the land, they needed the building to be in the back, but they took it down to ground level. So in actuality, that building should be in the front with parking in the back.
And I will acknowledge, Ms. Gloria, you did tell me that town staff was in contact with DOT, that town staff had called DOT. If you read the wording of the special permit that was approved by planning and zoning, it said no construction would be started prior to DOT approval being submitted to the town. Maybe it's just my opinion, but the town calling DOT isn't DOT approval being submitted to the town. That is the town going out and reaching out to inquire about something. And when a DOT approval has not been approved, whether it's something verbal or not, and do we have any records of when these conversations took place and who they spoke to at DOT to have some kind of backup that this is who was spoken to by this person on town staff on this date, and town staff was told by this person at DOT that this has approval. Do we have that record?
I don't even agree with that, Jason, to be honest with you. To me, it just seems like somewhat miscommunication. Normal process was followed like it normally was, but in this particular case, there was a specific directive that maybe was not quite understood, like it's a thing that we could fix in the future, maybe, if there's a specific direction, until maybe add the word written submission, with the planning and zoning, like something for the future, like normal procedure was followed, but in this case, that's what it sounds like to me. So, in terms of whether somebody talked to them or not, you're almost contradicting yourself, Jason.
Well, it's-
Yeah, because it says written, it reads like a
That's-
written submission, and maybe in the past, that's not what it was. So going forward in the future.
And my other concern is when you have, I believe it was in June, the building permit fee was paid. On that building permit, it said one of the conditions was construction not to start until after DOT approval was submitted to the town. How much construction had started prior to that point, and if the town had received a verbal approval from DOT prior to that, why would that be even written into the building permit at that point? If the town already believed DOT had approved it, why would that still be written into the permit?
I think the word written could clarify a lot in the future.
I would definitely
Yeah,
make
you know
that
what I mean.
recommendation going forward. Anytime there's special permits where there's a requirement on any documentation be provided to the town that planning and zoning says written approval. So that way there's documentation to go back to, written submission of the approval, or even an email. That way you have documentation that this is when it was approved, and we can eliminate this from happening again. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on the agenda. Next item up is item 10, appointments to boards and commissions. Brian Card is seeking reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a regular member. His term would run from January 1st, 2025 to December 30th, 2027. This would be regular member position number 1. Mr. Card attended 9 out of 12 meetings in 2024 and 7 out of 9 meetings in 2023. The Planning and Zoning Commission currently has 1 regular member vacancy and 1 alternate member vacancy. The regular member term runs for 3 years. Again, that is from January 1st to December 31st. I will entertain a motion to reappoint Mr. Card.
So moved. Motion. Second.
Motion was made by Mr. Grandelski, seconded by Mr. Gambatista. I will open up for discussion.
Brian's been on the board for quite a while. Sometimes I don't agree with him. That's okay. But I think he's done a good job to get to that point. and for someone to be on for that period of time, they have some dedication to the town. So I support his reappointment.
Thank you. Any other comments?
May I say something about him? Or that would be unusual?
We would have to suspend the rules.
Okay, never mind.
Ms. George, do you have anything to add?
No,
Thank
I'm more
you.
than confident in our planning and zoning commission members.
Thank you. Other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Do you want a roll call vote?
Abstentions? We're going to have to do a roll call vote because it was that close. Ms. Gloria, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
Ms. George?
Yes.
Ms. Barclay?
No.
Mr. Grandowski?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Gambatista?
Yes.
Ms. Wakefield?
Yes.
Mr. Whitehead?
No.
Mr. Kurtula?
Yes.
Ms. Murphy?
No.
That would be 5 yeses, 4 noes.
Thank you. Motion passes. We'll move on the agenda. Next item up is item 10B. Keith Thurlow is seeking reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a regular member. His term would run from January 1st, 2025 to December 30th, 2027. This will be regular member position number 5. Mr. Thurlow attended 12 out of 12 meetings in 2024 and 6 out of 9 meetings in 2023. The Planning and Zoning Commission currently has 1 regular member vacancy and 1 alternate member vacancy. The regular member term runs for 3 years from January 1st to December 31st. Can I get a motion to reappoint Mr. Thurlow?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Mr. Grandowski, seconded by Ms. Barclay. Discussion? I will say, I think Mr. Thurlow does a good job running a meeting. I know their meetings can run extremely long, and a lot of times you do get members of the public who are coming out opposed to projects that come up, more often so than you do get members of the public who come out in favor of projects. And I know I've heard it said that a lot of times more people will come out and speak out against things than those who will come out and speak out in favor of them. And from sitting in this seat, I can have a huge respect for Mr. Thurlow and the meetings he runs and the job he does chairing the Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Grandowski.
Yeah, Keith's been on it for quite a while. I think he has the best interests of the town. He, he does his homework. Let's put it that way. He does his homework. He's out there looking at, spending a lot of extra time, prior to the meetings. And, dedication, I appreciate the dedication and the time and effort that he puts into the commission.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy?
I would just like to reiterate that he runs a great meeting and a very difficult situation, and that I appreciate that he listens to the people.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing no further comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is item 10C. John Sarantopoulos is seeking reappointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a regular member. His term would run from January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2027. This would be regular member position number 4. Mr. Sarantopoulos attended 11 out of 12 meetings in 2024 and 8 out of 9 meetings in 2023. The Planning and Zoning Commission currently has 1 regular member vacancy and 1 alternate member vacancy. And again, the regular member terms run for 3 years from January 1st to December 31st. Can I get a motion to reappoint Mr. Sarantopoulos?
I'll make that motion.
Motion was made by Ms. Barclay,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Gambatista. I will open up for discussion, comments. I will say the meetings that I've attended and ones I've watched online, Mr. Sarantopoulos is always engaged and a lot of times he'll ask questions that others don't ask, almost like he's looking at it from a different point of view, which I feel is a great asset on any boards and commissions we have. When you have varying points of view, then different questions might get asked that others wouldn't ask. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Next item up is item 10D. Robert Lofquist is seeking reappointment to the Conservation Commission. As a regular member, his term would run from March 1st, 2025 to February 28th of 2030. This would be regular member position number 5. Mr. Lofquist attended 11 out of 12 meetings in 2024 since being appointed in January of 2024. The Conservation Commission currently has one alternate member vacancy. The regular member terms run for 5 years from March 1st to February 28th. Can I get a motion to reappoint Mr. Lofquist?
I'll make that motion.
Motion was made by Mr. Grandelski, seconded by Ms. Barclay. I will open up for discussion, comments. Mr. Grandelski.
Liaison to the Conservation Commission, and he's engaged, like all the conservation members. They are engaged. It's always positive. Not like some of the things we have here or planning and zoning. It's a pleasure to be there. Even when they come here, it's an interesting meeting. The bus tours and whatever else they're doing, it's more pleasurable what they're dealing with. It comes out in a pleasurable scenario. So, and he's engaged in all of that. I mean, he's there. So, I think he should be reappointed.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing no further comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is item 11A, reports from liaisons, Board of Education liaison. Mr. Naparata.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
So the last meeting, it was pretty quick. Not a real lot of highlights. So there were a couple that stuck out for me, in case you didn't catch it. But the ad hoc committee for the school mascot, the committee has reconvening at the end of the month to go over some imagery being created by KHS art students. So they're still working on that. We haven't seen anything yet, but according to Dr. Nash, they're working hard on it. So, and then we're really in the budget season right now. That's our main focus. So, a couple of highlighted items there. We've filled the last armed security officer position at Goodyear. So we have one at each of the buildings now, which is really great. And I actually had a chance to spend a few minutes with a couple of them just this morning, actually, at Goodyear, at the high school, and at KMS. And I think we really lucked out with the people we got in those positions. They're really engaged with the kids, and I think it's money well spent. The other highlight for the schools is the creation of the Killingly Therapeutic Academy, which Dr. Nash is going to speak a little bit more about after. So that's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Questions, comments from council? Ms. Wakefield.
I see our robotics team did quite well over there in England.
Yes, I'm not sure. Do you know where they're at with?
Yes, well, they're coming home, but they did, the junior team, I think, placed first in one of their competitions.
Kyle, if you could just repeat that for the
So,
audience at home.
so they're on their way back shortly, and the junior team,
I'll confirm that.
all right.
And the sports programs are doing well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Wrestlers in the indoor track seems to be very, very, doing really well.
So the junior team won the prestigious Excellence Award at the Battle of Barnet. So, that's what they won.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from council? Ms. George, did you have anything?
I do not, thank you.
Mr. Cottula?
I had one that I asked you last month, but maybe it's more for Dr. Nash when she comes up on the effect of EastCon moving out, on the financial impact of that.
Well, I think that's where the genesis of the Killingly Therapeutic Academy came from, and she's going to be speaking more in depth about that afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I want to thank you for coming, Mr. Averett.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to the agenda. Next item up is Borough Council Liaison.
All right, so the fire truck update, it's moving along. They're hoping, I believe later this year, they're expecting delivery. It seems like it's been a really long time, but apparently the timeline to get a new fire truck is like 4 to 5 years, which is crazy. They're also, the sidewalks on Reynolds Street, we talked about waiting for the invoice from the town for that. We finally decided on our logo. I'm gonna totally, it actually has the gazebo, and it's in sepia, and I think, is it history, where history meets, or some, it's about the merging of the past and the present. And that took a really long time. So if anybody wonders why it's taking this, and having spent time at the mascot meetings, that's totally student-driven, and there's a whole lot more students trying to decide on that. There's a very small group of trying to decide on our logo for the borough, and it's taken us a very long time to find just right. Our budget workshop is going to be March the 12th. Our caucus is the 31st of March. Our budget meeting will be April 7th, and our elections will be May the 5th. And if anybody in the borough, any borough residents that are interested in maybe having a seat on the borough, there's always, I think there is going to be one opening. If somebody has decided that they don't want to continue on the borough, so we're definitely looking for any borough residents that are interested in serving the borough. And it's a great, it's really good to find, figure out how things work, is getting on boards and commissions like that, so.
Tammy, would you mind for the public? I can't remember how do they get, is that elected or?
Oh, that's elected. Yeah, yep. We have a regular six to 8 election. I think they do it at the library, though.
Yeah, I believe they do it at the library, and it's the first Monday in May, so it actually ends up being on the same night as our annual town meeting.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from council? Ms. George, did you have anything?
Nope, all set, thanks.
Thank you. We'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is item 12A, discussion and acceptance of monthly budget reports. Can I get a motion to accept the summary report on general fund appropriations for town government?
A second.
Motion was made by Ms. Murphy, seconded by Mr. Gambatista. Discussion, questions, comments? Ms. George, did you have anything?
Nope, all set.
Thank you. Seeing, Mr. Grandelsky.
When we had the elevator repaired, and looking forward, did there anything come up, like we were looking forward to go up upper floors with the elevator in the future? When they did the repairs, were there any discussion that the elevator is, I don't know, when you have discussion with the elevator people, did they, anything about future expansion, or, is this the end of its life, or?
So the elevator is reaching the end of its life. I mean, elevator was installed in the 80s. It is, but they were going to be providing us with a report. I have not seen that report yet as to what we can anticipate for investments over the next several years, and when we really need to consider a replacement of that elevator, and the town would potentially look at either replacing it as is or exploring that option of going to the upper floors. We've had that priced out several different
Right,
times. The
different.
elevator to extend the shaft and go up to the upper floors is at least close to $1 million investment at this point in time. And redoing the upper floors for regular occupation, there's a lot of work that would need to be done up there. I mean, we're probably looking at a $3 to $4 million project. So again, that would be driven by program use and needs and demands within the town hall, but it would be a substantial investment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is 12B, system object based on adjusted budget for the Board of Education, and we actually had none submitted this month. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 13A, Town Manager's Report. Ms. Gloria, if you could go over this, please.
Yes, so I provided with you North Road Bridge. If you recall, several years ago, the town submitted, there was a new funding program mechanism for bridges with a federal estate bridge program, and it ends up being 100% funding, 80% federal, 20% state. 4 of the 7 bridges that we had submitted for received funding commitments, and they're in various stages of their process. We just received notification, which I attached, from DOT that they're giving us a funding commitment for the bridge on North Road. So that will make 5 of the 7 that we submitted accepted within that program. And again, that program is fully managed by the state, so it runs through their cycle and their process. The town will participate with design meetings at certain thresholds to be able to give input and feedback and recommendations and requests, but ultimately this it all runs through the state. Eversource has provided their vegetation management plans for the upcoming tree management program for the upcoming season. So on that map, you're going to see the highlighted routes in which they're going to be assessing all of the trees and making any necessary trimming or tree removal during those routes in the upcoming time frame, in the upcoming season, so really the spring through fall season. TEC, which is the railroad, they also provided their vegetation management plan as well. And it just really talks about what targeted herbicide applications that they're going to use for vegetation management along the railroads. The Pura 101 informational meeting is going to be Monday, February 24th. It's at the Killingley High School Auditorium starting at 6 o'clock. Registration is really strongly encouraged. If we have to get them a head count for how many that we believe will be attending that have registered, if they feel that there's not sufficient registration, they will cancel the event. So if you are even contemplating attending, please make sure that you email or call my office to make sure that you're added to the registration list. Last count we had, there were 8 people. We have shared this with all of the other communities surrounding us and also notified them of the registration needs. We did get some from other communities that have registered. I've spoken about it, I think, the last 3 times I've been on Winnie, and encouraged that registration. So hopefully we will pick up some additional registrations. But I believe that we have to let them know by beginning part of next week for them to make their plans. So if anyone listening is contemplating on going on the 24th, please email or call my office and let Ashley know or any of us know that you plan on coming, and we will make sure that you're added to the list. Or if it's you and several other people, we need the head count. We don't need to have a list of names, just need the head count of how many that are intending on coming. Next Tuesday, February 18th, the Lieutenant Governor will be hosting the award ceremony for Killingly veterans who served in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. We have over 100 people right now attending that event. That is also going to be at the high school auditorium and at 4 o'clock. And we've had some really positive communications with a lot of our veterans that have reached out to register for that. So we're really excited for that event. The Siting Council docket for the 470C NTE, I attached the notification that we received from the Siting Council, and the request to reopen that docket has been granted. The Siting Council is going to be holding a public hearing on the matter. Obviously, I will inform you of all of those dates. You do have an item within executive session. You have our town attorney is here to also review with you. However, I wanted to provide that communication to you. I've also provided you a list of additional meetings that I have attended, and I do have one last item to hand out to you tonight.
Thank you.
For those that are watching, I have just handed out my resignation notice to the town of Killingly. It has been my honor to serve as the town manager for the town of Killingly for the last 6 years. This community is a phenomenal community that I greatly respect. The staff that is here is an amazing group of team and staff. And I will sorely miss them. I want everyone to know that this has nothing to do with Mr. Grandowski's accusations, which are completely unfounded and unwarranted. I have taken a fantastic new opportunity for myself, and I am really looking forward to being able to service some of the smaller towns in our communities. While my contract requires a much shorter notification period, this is the budget season, and I will not abandon or move away from the community and the staff during this time period. So I have worked out with my upcoming employer that I won't begin until after the annual town meeting in May, so that way I can see this budget process through. So my last day will be effective for May 5th after the end of the annual town meeting.
On behalf of the town and the town council, I will say you leaving will be a great loss to the town. I've learned a lot from you in my time on the council, and I know how dedicated you are to this community. You're at every single event that I've been to throughout town, and I do appreciate that you're giving us the extended notice as well. I know that's something that you didn't have to do, and it just goes to speak to your character that you're willing to help the town get through this next budget cycle.
I will recommend to the town strongly that you consider seeking and entering into a contract for an interim town manager as you begin your search process. It will likely take some time to get through a search process, and none of the staff here have sufficient time to dedicate to the workload in which I was doing, and it would be unfair to any of them for that request. So respectfully, I would recommend that the council seek an interim town manager to be in that stead during that time period.
Thank you.
I've been on the council now about 16 months, so very new. It's quite a learning curve, and watching Ms. Clorio, it's the dedication and then the experience to do this job, I think is very overwhelming, very difficult. You really can't get it wrong. There's so much to know and so much to learn. And I wish you the best. We're going to miss you dearly. I think we just have to keep in mind that, you don't get to these positions easily. There's a lot of work to be done to get to this level. And, I'm sorry to see you go.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Mary, I would,
oh, go ahead, Patty.
Go ahead, Patty.
no, go ahead, Michelle, you can go first.
I was just going to say, we don't always agree, but I've always spoken highly of your talents. You're very, very talented. It will be a loss, definitely.
Patty?
Mary, I am terribly sorry to see you go. You have done a phenomenal job. I'd like to see you held up against other towns that have been put through what you've been put through and what your staff has been put through, and commission members over the past year. I'm not one to pull punches, so I will be very honest here. It's a great loss to this town, and there are people sitting at that table that should be looking in the mirror as to why we've lost people. Bruno Doobie, you tried wiping out the planning and development director at last budget, and now we're losing our town manager. Maybe people who only sit there twice a month and don't do the jobs should consider what goes into these positions. It's going to be a great loss to Killingly, and there's going to be a lot more fallout than you realize. Mary, I wish you only the best in your future. Thank you for everything you have done for this community that is not recognized.
Thank you. Moving on to the agenda. Sorry.
I'd like to echo everybody in the room. And I'd also like to say that, sometimes we agree to disagree in certain things, but you will be missed.
Thank you. Moving on to the agenda. Next item up is 13B, WPCA moratorium update.
Sorry, Mayor, I did have one question before you brought that out. Is there going to be anybody from the Pura board at this meeting, or is it just going to be representatives of them?
I did incorporate the flyer that outlined who the actual person was.
Okay.
And it's Thomas Lopez, who is their outreach and enforcement arm and education, Office of Education. So he's the director of their education arm of Pura. And I'm not sure if he's going to have additional staff members there with him or commission members, but that's the main individual.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Colorio, if you could go over the moratorium update.
Sure.
Please.
So as I outlined last week when you met with the WPCA that I would be providing, Dave had prepared a memo to go over the various funding mechanisms that we have and are in the process of applying for funding. And again, we continue to try and seek additional grant funding from federal and state. I've had some positive conversations with some of the state offices, and I did talk to Senator May Flexer just this past week, and I'll be working to reach out to our House representatives as well to see about getting letters of support that we might need through those application processes. So I did incorporate that, and also there was additional questions previously about the cleaning and kind of the history of the chamber tanks, kind of what that process was, so we had them outline that as well. I didn't prepare, or given your robust conversation you had last week. There's no changes or updates, if you will, from that, so I just wanted to make sure you were provided with this information.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from council?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Grandelsky.
So in light of the upgrade that we just went through, we're not quite finished with all the upgrades that had to be done, because there's still quite a bit of work that goes down in the plant. You know, I get comments that we spent $25 million on doing the upgrades, and I have to say, we gotta spend money on the plant to make it work, and maybe we should have spent a little more over time. But as far as, we put $2 million in, you know, from the budget money from the Lake Road Power Plant, but should there be more input from the ratepayers? You know, as far as we know, we're into budget season now. I don't know what they're looking at, if there's gonna be any budget increases, or how, is there any good way to, there's no good way to attack that problem, but how do we get more funding for the maintenance that we have to do, other than the you know, in addition to the upgrades that we're looking at? Is there?
The budget, next year's budget proposal will be presented to the WPCA next week.
Okay.
So they're still in the final processes of that. That'll get to them next week, and then they are to forward their, hopefully act on it next week, and then that comes to the town council for consideration. They typically the town council meets with the WPCA for a presentation of their budget in April, at your April regular meeting. So they will receive the budget. If they don't pass it, they would likely have to do a special meeting, just so that way they can make sure they meet the March timelines for planning and zoning submission, and then ultimately submission into the budget book for consideration to the town council.
Okay, so next week. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
I just have one comment, and it was a comment that Michelle had made, that the ratepayers shouldn't be responsible for paying for the town's growth and the growth of whoever else uses the Water Pollution Control Authority.
Yeah, to clarify, I think there's a difference between O&M, general maintenance, existing maintenance, and growth.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to the agenda. We have no unfinished business for town council action, so we'll move on to item 15A, consideration and action on a resolution for the town to enter into a regional revaluation program and related agreements. Can I get a motion to adopt this resolution?
Make the motion.
Motion was made by Mr.
Second.
Petula, seconded by Mr. Gambatista. Ms. Gloria, could you go over this, please?
Yes, so the NECOG prepares has been doing for several cycles now, a regional revaluation program that multiple towns collaborate on. It doesn't change our revaluation timeline. This does, the larger the group, the more parcels, usually the better buying power. So we do have a slight savings with regards to participating in this program. The biggest savings actually for the town is that currently we're utilizing the eQuality software program for our valuation, our assessor's office. That program, I do have the assessor here, Kathy. That program, she can attest that it has not necessarily worked to how it was portrayed it would be. So eQuality is kind of the newest game in town, if you will, around assessment software. They only came out 7 years ago, not very long. They definitely haven't worked out the bugs. And it's definitely caused a lot of challenges. By moving into this program for two things. One, the vendor that has been selected through this process with NECOG is Vision. And they would convert us to Vision 8 appraisal valuation system for free, no additional cost to the town. That's about $100,000 for that conversion. Vision is a tried and true evaluation program through the state of Connecticut. It's kind of really two of them. It's the Tyler software and it's the Vision software. Secondly, we are all well aware of the angst and the concerns and the challenge and the communication challenges that arose at the last revaluation process with Tyler. This one is with Vision. And I will say, every contract is dependent on their assigned personnel to that contract. So this contract that we have, the member towns, the town manager, and a designation from our assessor's office will be able to interview the staff that's going to be assigned to our valuation, and we can reject the staff and tell them they have to fill them with somebody else. So we have an opportunity to control that. So I really felt that this was a good opportunity for Killingly to go back into the program. So Killingly, the first time this came out, good golly, Melissa Bonin was here. So 2010, I think, maybe, was the first year out of the gate with this, maybe 11. No, I think it was 2010. Yeah. We participated in it. Tyler had gotten the contract at that point in time. When the next go around for the next contract came up, we opted to come out of that revaluation. It was really recommended by our assessor at that point in time, Melissa, to not participate in it for two reasons. One, we were getting actually a better rate independently on our own. We had enough parcels and we were able to get a better rate than the revaluation. Secondly, the revaluation had been at that time awarded to it wasn't Tyler, I think it was Vision at the time, or one of the other ones. So they really were more comfortable with Tyler at the time, and we were getting a much better rate. But as time has progressed, this contract has more towns have joined it. So the parcel count has risen, and therefore it's been driving a better rate. So we don't have a huge savings on the actual rate itself, but the conversion is a significant savings to the town and a significant benefit. So the recommendation is to approve. NECOG did approve this at their last regular meeting, correct, Patty? Did she hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we voted, and I let them know that we hadn't voted on it yet, but we were gonna go forward as long as the vote was clear.
Yes. And so while Killingly is listed in here, the town would have had the ability to pull out without any ramifications. But again, highly recommended. Kathy Thornton, our assessor, is here if anybody has any additional, more in-depth assessment type questions that I can't answer.
And can I just say,
Yep,
there's
come to the mic.
11 of NECOG's towns that are participating in this.
Yep. You have to come to the microphone. And is it okay if Kathy speaks?
Yep, I'll just ask for a motion to,
So moved.
Second.
a motion to amend the rules
Hang on a second.
to allow Kathy to speak. Motion was made by Mr. Grandelsky, seconded by Ms. Wakefield. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Welcome.
Thank you. The only other thing I'll say on this is with
Is the microphone on?
No, there you
sorry.
go.
Okay.
Sorry. The regional reval does 50% of inspections of the parcels. Compared to the last reval, we're going to get about 2,000 more inspections. And that equates to between $50,000 and $60,000. That's the only other thing I want to say.
Thank you. I apologize.
Yes.
I didn't bring that up.
No,
Thank you.
Thank
that
you.
was it.
All right, I will open up for discussion. I will say I did receive feedback during the last two revaluations And I'm glad to see that we're going to get more inspections, and it's going to be a cost savings to the town over what it would cost if we had the same amount of inspections done. I know not everybody likes having inspections done on their properties, but I think it helps get a more fair appraisal, because I did get a lot of feedback from people and based on where their homes were revalued last time.
So this doesn't fall under a bid process at all?
It is a bid process.
Okay.
NECOG actually performed the bid. And so in the cover sheet, that's what I outline, how they received proposals for that agreement. They had the assessors and the people and some of the first selectmen, they reviewed those proposals that were received, and then they made their selection from there. So it went through a selection process and a bid process.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on the agenda. Next item up is 15B, consideration and action on a resolution creating a Board of Education Special Revenue Fund for the operation of a special education facility. Can I get a motion to adopt this resolution? Motion was
Second.
made by Ms. Murphy, seconded by Mr. Gambatista. All right, I will open up for discussion.
I would recommend that the
Yep.
superintendency here, she can probably review this in greater detail.
I make a motion to suspend the rules and let
Second.
Dr. Nash speak.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carries. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for carving out a bit of time in your agenda for me tonight. So I wanted to start, and you have these slides on your table or they're up on the screen, with the dilemma. We have a dilemma. So special education tuition costs are rising in Connecticut, and we know this. And there's increasing costs for special education transportation. So just in December, EastCon notified us that they were raising their special education tuition costs mid-year 15%, and transportation 4%. So that was December 7th, 27th rather, right in the middle of the year. So imagine what that does for a budget when you've budgeted for one tuition and then it goes up 15%. So there's no guardrails for tuition and transportation when it comes to special education. Many of our students have long commutes to their out-of-placement schools, and when they're so far away from their home school, there is a disconnect and a disengagement from those students. And then there's always that looming fear of a reduced excess cost reimbursement grant rate. And this year, the preliminary number is 64%. It has never been that low. Last year it was 71%. We thought that was low. 64% is really low. We have not seen that in years, if ever. So that's the dilemma that we're facing. But if you turn the page, we have a solution to the dilemma. The solution is open our own specialized education program. Bring back those students from out-of-district placements and use our in-district transportation to reduce tuition and transportation costs. We can also serve students in surrounding towns, and we'll have more control over our special education costs. And that's the key to this solution, is having control over our special education costs. And so we're doing just that. Mr. Navarrete had just mentioned that we're opening the Killingly Therapeutic Academy, and that will be upstairs in the Westfield building because EastCon is moving out. They'll be out in the end of June. And so that space will be vacant, and we will be opening a therapeutic academy upstairs. So an out-of-district placement for students, grades 5 through 12 with behavioral challenges. And I also put the full flyer on your table as well if you want to take a look at that. And so we are partnering, and you'll notice that in the flyer, we are partnering with Effective School Solutions. They are an agency that has past experience with opening out-of-district placements within school districts. They also provide the therapeutic portion of an out-of-district placement. So clinicians, they'll provide 2 clinicians and 3 behavior techs. We call them BCBAs, Board Certified Behavior Analysts. They also do all the marketing. They created that flyer. They do the family outreach, the curriculum, the planning, the room design, and they also do all the data analysis every month to make sure the students are meeting the goals that are needed in their IEPs. And so if you turn the next page, you can kind of see it costs a lot to start up a program, or kind of like a mini school, right? So if you look at the cost for ESS, like I had mentioned, Effective School Solutions, all of what they include and their staff, $679,000. And then we provide the academic side, so they do the therapeutic, we provide the academic. The academic side would be 2 special education teachers. Those are additional special education teachers, not from our existing staff. And I just put a placeholder there of $180,000 with salary and benefits for 2 additional certified special education teachers. And then furniture, curriculum, supplies, all of that. You're looking at almost $1 million roughly to start up this program. And this concept here would service about 24 students at the Killingly Therapeutic Academy. So it does cost a lot of money to start this up. However, to keep the rates, or to keep the cost down, what we did is we identified students already who would be good candidates to come back from out-of-district placement, and we have reduced our tuition line in the budget that we're building right now to keep our costs down. The reason why those 2 items are in blue is because I did not put those 2 items into our operating budget for next year. I left those out. And that's really why I'm here today. Because I would like the town, if you flip the page, the town council to consider the opportunities for growth. And Jen, we can flip that slide. And a further reduction to the operating budget. So if we bring just 4 students from neighboring towns, Putnam, Plainfield, Eastford, to the program, at a tuition rate of $375 a day, or $68,000 per the year, that's a total of $272,000. That would easily pay for the furniture and the 2 special education teachers. If we were able to attract 10 students from out of town, we'd be able to pay for ESS altogether and actually take that out of our budget that we're building right now for next year. If we expand this even more, we can begin to reduce significantly our special education costs in our operating budget and become a little more self-sufficient and a lot more in control when it comes to special education costs. And that's really what I'm here to ask today is and you have that memo in your packet, I believe, to establish a special revenue fund that would be on the Board of Education side, so we can take in that revenue and pay the expenses for the startup, and then to continue to reduce our operating budget in future years as we expand this program. So, obviously we want to start with about 24 students. We don't want to start with 50 students, but we have the space for that. We have the whole upstairs at the Westfield building. And so those are 2 long hallways of classrooms. So we can start with 24, easily we can get to 50. And imagine what we could do with that tuition, bringing in students, and the need is there. So it is hard to find placements right now for special education students. They are all full. They all have waiting lists. And many times we are forced to have our students go to Rhode Island or Massachusetts or further down by the shoreline in Connecticut. And the transportation is really expensive when you do that.
Dr. Nash,
Yes.
I didn't know this when I first came into office. For the public, do you want to explain our responsibility to students who are here and we can't provide Like
Sure.
the statute?
Absolutely. And so a student that's on an individual education plan or IEP, we always try to provide the least restrictive environment. So of course, the least restrictive environment would be a regular education class. If a student is not successful in that special education class, they may go to perhaps a pull-out class for special education, receive some services there. If they're not successful there, then we keep what we call restricting the environment. I know that sounds kind of like a harsh word, but that's the word we use. And then if a student is not successful in our most restrictive environment that we have here in Killingly, and we do have some specialized programs within each school, but if a student is still not successful, then we look for an out-of-district placement. And if a student moves in tomorrow from Putnam and on their IEP, it says they go to a out-of-district placement that is $180,000 a year, we are obligated to continue paying for that student to go to that out-of-district placement.
Good evening, Dr. Nash. Quick question. In the 10-town area, if we develop this on our own with the ability to bring in other children, the numbers obviously are very attractive. Is there anyone else in the 10-town area that's doing this, that's, you're saying outsourcing has been becoming more difficult? Does anybody else have this same type of plan around us, or would we be the most attractive? Would we be individual to this, in the quiet corner here?
So EastCon will still exist, even though they are moving out of our upstairs. They will still exist, but they will be most likely in their Hampton space. So that is still a bit of a ways away from us, right? So in this general area, Woodstock Academy does partner with ESS, and they have a small program there. I'm not sure of their capability of expanding, but right now they have a small program, maybe 8 to 10 to 12 students. We have the capability because of our space. We are blessed with that space. Not every district has that space that we can really expand. I used to work in Ellington, and in Ellington, they acquired space to do this, and they're up to 54 students, and they can offset a great deal of their special education line in their budget with tuition from that program.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say that same thing, because we're very fortunate to have the building,
Yes, we are.
so.
That's the biggest obstacle with districts trying to start a program. Everyone wants to try to start a program like this, but they just don't have the facilities.
I just have a question. What is the average cost for out-of-district placements that we're paying for right now?
So we have a student now that is $265,000, all the way down to $54,000, and everything in between. I didn't do the average, but I could do that, and I didn't add everything up, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious, but seeing that the lowest one was, what, 54,000?
Yeah.
That's not far off from the 68,000. And I look at it this way: if we're able to offer to surrounding communities, instead of having to pay for transportation even further,
Yes.
they would be looking at saving money on transportation costs as well by coming to Killenly rather than going to Montville. Like I see local buses go down every day when I'm driving
Right.
to work.
Yep, and their superintendents have already reached out to ask if there were spaces available. So we know there are already some students that will be coming in for tuition.
Okay. Now, reason for the special revenue fund. I'm assuming a lot of that may have to do with MBR, because if you were to incorporate all this, even for what we're serving other towns, if you weren't to do it in the special revenue fund, that would go against our MBR, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
The use of a special revenue fund really helps to be able to create it as its own program and keep it separated from the remaining district costs. It keeps them budgeting for Killingly residents, the Killingly public schools, independent from this more regional type program.
And it gets audited just like everything.
Oh, yes, it's an audited special revenue fund, so it's part of the entire audit package. It would Depending on the incomes and expenditures out of that, it would meet whatever requirements are for like a major program versus what's considered minor programs. Depending on how many tuitions you have, it could potentially go
Right.
to a more intense scrutiny. So the resolution is also written that as they go through this, they could also receive grants specific to that program, and that grant would also be received into the special revenue fund because it is specific for that program.
Yeah, it's similar to Killingly Child Care Program. We have a special revenue fund for revenue that comes in, and we are able to pay some of those staff salaries out of that.
Now, if this were to go forward, and this program were to grow, one way I would see a benefit is, as you had mentioned, bringing more back in district, and if we're bringing out of district from other towns into town, by being able to pull money that's already in the Killingly's Board of Education budget out of the regular budget and use the special revenue fund to cover
Yes.
those costs. I see that as an opportunity to help offset any inflationary costs each year, any contractual obligation increases as far as salary increases and stuff like that. I see how that could definitely be a benefit. My concern would be on the flip side, if the program starts growing and then other towns start to bring back their out-of-placement back into their own towns. And I know this is crystal ball down the road, but what steps would Killingly's be able to take at that point to offset any reductions in out-of-district placements that are placed in Killingly?
I would, if I had a crystal ball, I would say there probably will never be less of a need for students needing specialized programming. Just that's the trend, right? So, as students maybe would leave or go back to their own sending school, there'd be other students, whether sending school or here in Killingly, where the need would exist for a more restrictive environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Nash, how are you?
Good.
I just have a question. So from a parent standpoint, currently, right now, how many kids do we have outplaced
60,
for special education?
65.
65. So you said you've already earmarked or you've already considered the students that would be good for this program?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens if you have a parent that does not want to, is happy with the outplacement and decides, they're not happy with bringing the child back?
Yeah.
I know. So how do you handle that? Would you just pick another student, or would there be a mediation? How would that work?
That's a great question. So it's always a conversation, and those conversations are happening right now at PPTs, and with our pupil service director reaching out to families. If there's really an issue and a parent or a family really is happy with the placement and feels like it would be very detrimental to have their student come back into their home school, then we would have that conversation. We've identified more students than we possibly can bring back. So if there are, let's say, 10 students off on that list that say, we're very happy with where we are, then we would just open more seats up to tuition-paying students. It's right now we're just kind of reaching out. We're feeling families out. Most families actually do want their students back in their home district because they can have a connection to their home school. They can go to assemblies. They can join different clubs. They can have more of a relationship with their peers.
Yeah, which I think is very important. I think a lot of kids that are outsourced, they lose that camaraderie with kids they've been with for years and years. So, yeah, I think this is a great opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd like to just add one thing. One thing I also see as a benefit for the students themselves, not from the financial side, even though I see the financial side of it as well for a reduction in transportation costs. As someone who, when I was in high school, my ride to school on the bus, I took 2 bus rides. I was in Voluntown, and I had to take the bus ride from the Sterling, Rhode Island line all the way through Voluntown to the Voluntown school, transfer buses, and then ride down to NFA. So my bus ride was well over an hour each way. So as I can see where a student would definitely like a much shorter bus ride and not be losing all that time. Granted, you could socialize while you're on the bus, but there's a lot of other things you can do when you're not on the bus. So I see being able to bring students closer to home as an advantage from that side of it as well.
Absolutely.
Ms. Barclay.
What if in your special fund you have a huge surplus?
So we would just continue to balance that with special education costs in the district. So, if the program expands, we need more staff, obviously. So that would, kind of eat away at that surplus. But we will have, let's just say, for instance, speech pathology, right? A speech pathologist needs to service students that have speech on their IEP that are part of the Therapeutic Academy. Well, that would be associated with that program. And so that person could be paid through the revenue of the Therapeutic Academy. And kind of you can continue to expand paraprofessionals that we would need for the Therapeutic Academy. So I don't know if we'll see a huge surplus, and that would be great, but we have plenty of staff that we can take out of the operating budget, as Mr. Anderson said, and use those funds to pay for.
Is there any room on the second floor to expand the program beyond 5 to 12?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. So there is restrictions in terms of kindergarten and first grade. They have to be on the first floor for fire code. We do have a small section downstairs that we could open for first grade and kindergarten, but indeed we want to go down to second through fourth pretty quickly. We want to see how this first year goes, but definitely second through fourth.
Thank you.
I
Ms.
just
Murphy.
have procedural questions because I'm still a little bit confused about the money.
Sure.
So we've got your budget, we've got our budget, you got non-lapsing fund. This is going to be something totally different?
Yes.
Are we funding it or are you funding it?
It would be completely from revenue, from tuition coming in. So, like for instance, Brooklyn students now, right, can come to our high school, but that revenue, their tuition, goes to offset the education budget, kind of on the town side, right? This would be coming into the Board of Education side, so we could pay for the operating costs, the staff for the therapeutic program.
So yeah, so this is other towns that are paying tuition to send students specifically to that program. That revenue would go specifically to that account. And that account would also they would be able to draw and use that account to pay for those the expenses specific to that program.
So separate account, no cap, like statutory cap?
Correct. No, there is no, this is just a special revenue fund. So they're, and it's, the Board of Education has had special revenue funds for a long time. And so this is another type of special revenue fund.
So tonight, we're just saying we think it's okay if you do that? Like, we're not
Correct.
funding or anything?
You're not funding
Okay.
anything at all. You're just establishing the fund and saying, yes, the Board of Education is going to control this. The Board of Education is going to is allowed to receive this. That's all this is. You're not putting any money into it. There's no funding of that.
There's no particular rule. So, Dr. Nash, if you make $10 million, we're not going to give you any other money, right?
I really don't think you're going to make $10 million. So
No, I'm just saying, because that's, what if it's like so much money? Okay, so we're just saying.
Mr. Gronowski.
Try to get a handle on this. I don't know if I'm in the right ballpark, but this is like its own, you're creating like a separate school district?
It's not a different school district. It's a program within our school, but it will have its own separate code. So like, For instance, KCS has a different code than KMS for reporting purposes. So it will have its own code, if you will, as a school, but it's not its own district.
But if you stop, you can't have a surplus. The Board of Ed cannot have a surplus at the end of the year. So we made the non-lapsing account, that kind of helped things go along. So the town controls the fund?
No. Board of Education would control this fund, just like all their other special revenue funds.
Yeah, so like I had mentioned before, Killingly Child Care Program, people pay for childcare, and that goes into a special revenue fund that's the Board of Education controls, and we are able to pay our childcare workers out of that fund.
But what happens if for some reason you get extra,
It ends up with a positive fund balance in that fund.
And you would see that in the audit. That's all part of the
I've
audit.
never paid that,
Yeah.
It's all the back pages of the fund, of the audit. About page 85 and on is all those special revenue funds. But yeah, they're all individually identified. This would be a special revenue fund that's individually identified, individually audited. Again, with regards to tuition, they're not going to be able to establish a tuition number that they're going to be able to charge other towns that is so exorbitantly higher than their expenditures, right? So that is going to be a limiting factor. And as they grow the program and they accept additional tuition students, they also have to provide those services.
Right.
So they have to
right.
hire
No.
staff and they have to bring
Yeah.
things in. So it's, this isn't about establishing a fund that they're going to be able to grow a huge amount of money in, because they're providing a service, and that tuition has to be tied to the services that are being provided, right? So, they can't price it so exorbitantly
Yeah,
that it's way above what their actual costs or expenditures are.
Well, like in your normal budget scenario, if special ed goes kind of out, you've got to take from other areas in the budget to
Yes.
cover the special ed.
Yes,
And you never know what that number is.
I know.
And that's what I'm saying. You could have a time when you could have extra money, and another time you're going broke, because the services that we have to provide,
I know.
whatever the individual.
IEPs.
Yes, IEPs,
That-
yes.
That takes a lot of things, and that can change throughout the course of the year. It's not like,
Yeah.
it's not like the kid is in one program with this cost associated for the whole year. It can change monthly or whatever.
It can change, but with our own program, we have a lot more control.
Right. Oh, no,
Yep.
that's.
I do have one question. You had mentioned if the program grows, you could bring on, I believe it was a speech pathologist. Any staff that you bring on to this program, would they be able to serve in the same capacity at other places through the school system?
Right, good clarification. So that example with the speech pathologist, I was actually imagining our current speech pathologist that we have in Killingly Public Schools would go to the Therapeutic Academy to serve a student that may need speech services, and we would be able to take that salary out of the operating budget. So that's kind of how and again, this is all, I hope this, we have a good plan and hoping we can get enough tuition students, but in the future, I could foresee that happening. And that's what they do in Ellington to kind of bring down their special education costs. Yep.
I have a question. So the ESS staff, now that's a separate entity?
Yes.
Is that something that's just a startup?
So,
Or is that
yeah.
going to be permanent?
We have worked with ESS in our specialized programs at the high school and intermediate school and have had really good success with them. Eventually, we hope to build our capacity and we would not need them anymore. However, you still do need to have a therapeutic side to an outplacement program. That's what makes it so specialized. So we would need then to bring in our own clinicians to do that part of the work, our own behavior techs to do that part of the work. So you'd be swapping an outside agency cost for an inside staff cost, really.
But you'd
We
take
could.
the overhead yourself, so
Yeah.
you'd be a big savings.
We
type
could.
of thing. Get them, I understand you need somebody
Yes.
with that experience to get the
Right.
rolling.
Yep.
But it would be nice to be able to
Yes,
be
absolutely.
involved.
Build the capacity to do that ourselves, right?
And the 280,000, you had mentioned that you would have to add that into your budget this coming year?
Yes, I didn't put that into our budget. I've left that kind of on the side.
But potentially you would.
If we do not receive tuition, if we receive the tuition, we can offset that. We can pay for those items, furniture, curriculum, and the 2 special education teachers.
I'm assuming that's why you reflected the 4 students at 272 to get you within 8,000 of the 280?
Yes.
Okay.
And you've already gotten multiple requests?
Already, excuse me, already definitely 3, and a possible 4th. So that's why I chose 4 as the number.
So I like the idea. I think a concern is we get the audit like so far after, and it does become relevant because like when we're trying to deliberate on the money, like what is the surplus, and we are not getting it till like a year later. So I think that's some of these questions, like, all right, I can see if you get in the red, you're going to cover it from something else. If you really had a surplus, as we decide your budget for the ask, we're not going to know what it is. And so I think that presents a little bit of a dilemma. Because that's what's happened in the past. We don't even know what's coming back.
Right. So I'm trying to think of how to be transparent about that. So when we would build our Board of Education budget and we would see what we have in the special revenue fund, we could certainly kind of highlight or call out or spotlight things that we are using that to bring
Yes,
down.
I would feel good about that.
Okay.
If when the budget came to us, like say you're very successful next year.
Yeah.
Yep. We had this many students, whatever, and we still have some spaces or we don't, and we've got $2 million. Because it does make a difference with
Right.
the ask.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one thing I would add as well, we don't have the audited numbers, the concrete bottom line. We usually have an estimate that's provided to us well ahead of when we actually receive the audited numbers as well. So it isn't like we don't know until the end of the audit process. We have a decent idea going into the budget. So. Any other questions, comments? Ms. George, did you have anything further?
Nope. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nash.
You're welcome.
Yes. Anything further from you, Dr. Nash?
That is it for me.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time and your great questions.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second. I will open up for any further discussion amongst the council. All right. I will say that I feel, as Ms. Barclay just said, that all our questions that we had got answered. And I feel a lot more comfortable now, having discussed this, than I did coming in. And which I'm really glad we had the presentation we did, and we were able to get answers to the questions. So. Anything further? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
I abstain.
One abstention. Motion carries. So we'll now move on in the agenda. Next item up is item 15C, consideration and action on a resolution setting the dates, times, and places of the public hearing, the annual town meeting, and the adjourned annual town meeting machine vote on the 2025 to 2026 budget ordinance. Can I get a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Grandelski, seconded by Ms. Barclay. Ms. Caloria, can you go over this, please?
Yes, so as I presented at the last meeting, the draft for the dates for the budget process, we are following kind of historical practice on all of this. Historically, the public hearing has been held on the second Thursday of the month. By charter, it's required to be held before the 15th of April. So April 10th is the scheduled date of the public hearing, which will be held again at the high school, starting at 7 p.m. The annual town meeting is by charter the first Monday in May, which is May 5th, scheduled again at the Killingly High School at 7 p.m. The all-day machine vote is scheduled for May 13th, which is the subsequent Tuesday, the week after, the Tuesday on the week after the annual town meeting. And again, that's an all-day machine vote, which will be from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. at both polling locations. And we have submitted the reservations to the school for all of those dates, and we have also put placeholders for the subsequent reconvening dates, should that be necessary.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Ms. George, do you have anything?
Nope, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We'll now move on in the agenda. I will entertain a motion regarding items 15D, E, F, G, H, I, J, all into one.
I'll make that motion.
Motion was made by Mr. Grandelski, seconded by Ms. Murphy. Ms. Gloria, can you go over these, please?
Yeah, so these are reaffirming resolutions to a number of policies that are required by our Small Cities Community Development Block Grants. These policies have been in place for well over 15, 20 years. Failure to adopt any of these would make the town ineligible to receive the grant awards. We currently have an $810,000 grant for upgrading the domestic violence shelter. Here, we've received a number of grants throughout the years, some with regards to our housing authority that all run through this program. So again, you know, many of these are, and these policies are the required policies from those grants.
Thank you.
I feel like it's our annual Small Cities Grant group of resolutions that we do every year.
Thank you. Questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion's carried. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to move to item 17A and B ahead of items 15K and L.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made by Ms. George, seconded by Mr. Cottula. Discussion? Okay, so we'll move to items 17A and B. We'll move into executive session with the town council, the town manager, the town attorney, and the finance director.
Mr. Chair, don't we need a vote on that?
Yes.
To go into executive session?
Yes, that's why I am,
Okay, all
yep,
right.
I'm just stating who's going to go in.
Okay, all right.
So I will entertain that motion to enter into executive session with those people I just mentioned.
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. Wakefield.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Gambatista. Further discussion? Just want to say why we're doing this ahead of time is before items K and L, is it's better to speak with the town attorney before we go back into K and L. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain.
One abstention. Motion carries. We're now in executive session. It is currently 8:55 PM.